Namaskar friends, I am Shubhra Sinha, your course instructor, and we are learning lecture 4 of module 5 of the stress management course. This particular segment deals with some more causes of occupational stress in continuation with what we have studied in lecture 3. Let us begin with a recap of what we are going to study today. Today, we have tried to classify the causes of occupational stress according to the factors related with the work and work setting. Primarily, we will focus on the design of the task, the management style, interpersonal relationship, work role and career concerns. Sometimes you may find things happening again, being repeated, but this is another way of classifying occupational stressors. That is why a little bit of repetition is necessary. Let us move on and see what we have in these particular sections. The first factor we are going to discuss about is the design of the task. That means particular demands of a task, what we are supposed to do in order to successfully complete that task. So, first of all, every task is associated with its own load, which we call the workload. If the task is complicated, if the task is lengthy, if the task contains many steps, it increases the workload. On the other hand, simple tasks which are not engaging the person in multiple steps will be of less load. Then how many breaks are available and how these breaks are arranged during the task hours. Whether there is only one break which is of 1 hour or there are 4 breaks of 15 minutes. This structuring also causes a lot of difference in the perception of stress. If you work for extended hours for long time continuously without changing your task at hand or without taking a break, you can feel more stressed as compared to if you have intermittent breaks of moderate duration, which adds to your mental alertness and refreshes you. Then rotational shifts which are random may create a chaotic environment. If there are rotations and the rotations are pre-designed, the employees are informed about their turn and when they are supposed to arrive, when they are supposed to leave. So, if the schedule is defined beforehand, the things will be sorted. But if there are random arrangements and anybody can be called at any point of time without any prior scheduling, this leads to a chaotic environment and it increases the level of perceived stress. Monotonous task usually creates more stress on employees as compared to tasks which are engaging and interesting. Then infrequent breaks, as we were talking about, results in fatigue and decreased productivity. Long working hours should be reduced to shorter durations of working, maybe up to 2 or 3 hours and then a break in order to maintain the work life balance and avoid unnecessary mental health issues. Shift of work is also important. Usually the workers who work in the night shift suffer from more physical and mental problems as compared to those who work during day shifts. It happens because night shifts interrupts with the usual biological clock of a person and requires the person to be awakened at a time which is usually kept for sleeping and taking rest. So, this disturbance with the natural biological clock may put the person at a high risk of suffering from physical and mental problems. Again, a few more factors include lack of control, that is, a sense of helplessness and reduced motivation in the task. If an employee feels that he or she has no control over the job characteristics, job designing, job scheduling, obviously the person would feel like a machine who is simply carrying out the commands given by the superiors and the management. This quickly leads to demotivation of employees and they become mentally indifferent towards the outcomes of the task. Under ritualized skills or underutilized skills leads to frustration and disengagement as well. Underutilized skills means the person is more capable and he or she has been given a task which requires very simple skills and abilities. So, basically if I employ a highly educated and professionally trained person to do a very mechanical, maybe accounting task, he or she may feel bored. He or she may realize that his abilities are not being utilized properly, and this underutilization of abilities leads to frustration and later on occupational stress. If an employee finds his task meaningless or redundant, which is not going to fetch any recognition to the person, which is not going to result any kind of reward or perks for the person except the salary, the person may feel stressed because he will be a kind of marginalized person in the organization. Who is there or not there is not going to make much difference in the organizational climate, in the organizational work culture. The next important segment which draws many occupational stressors is the management style. How a manager going to manage the employees and the task? Usually every manager has the most important task of completing the production goals, and if it is a service sector industry, he or she is supposed to render the services at an optimum level to satisfy the need of the customers and to comply with the standards of the organization. At the same time, the manager is also responsible for managing the employees who are again human beings, and being human means being a very complicated entity. So, while maintaining the performance standards of the organization, the management or the manager is also supposed to manage the social relationship at work, also to manage the mental health and physical health of the employees, and to keep them motivated for working and accomplishing the goals successfully. So, any uninvolvement, lack of involvement from workers in the decision making process means the management is not interested in taking feedbacks from the ground level workers, or the management is not interested to give them a participation in decision making. Ineffective communication within the organization, well, it encompasses many different branches or many different streams. Ineffective communication, that is why you will find this term under various sections. We will keep discussing about it more and more as we move further. And finally, the third important thing here is the absence of family friendly policies are the three major issues. So, let us elaborate upon these three important factors, which is the lack of involvement in decision making process, second is the ineffective communication, and third is the absence of family friendly policies. So, if I take up the first point, that is the lack of worker participation, what happens that the process of decision making is usually a top down process. Top down process means there is a central committee, there is a top level management which is going to discuss about the issues, which collects informations from the ground level workers and then analyzes the situation, have discussions among themselves, and they arrive at a particular policy decision. Then that policy decision is communicated to the workers for implementation. So, this is a typical top down process of communication or decision making, where the decisions are taken at the higher level and then they are communicated to a lower level of management so that they can be implemented. Here the workers do not have any participation in that decision and they have no channel to send their feedback to the top level management who is actually involved in the task of decision making. Now, this is a bad situation for both workers and management. If you consider the perspective of a worker, he or she may feel left out. He or she may feel like an unimportant entity. Although he has to perform everything, he has to do everything, but his opinions, his requirements, his analysis, his reflections over the task and the convenience and inconvenience is neither sought by the management nor it is given any respect. And from the perspective of the management, the risk is equally big. Suppose the top level management who is taking the decision is not aware of the subtle realities of the ground, what will happen? They will come at the wrong conclusions. If they are not in direct touch with the ground level workers who are actually working, there is always a risk of missing important aspects while making decisions and then leading to faulty decisions which may lead to bad consequences for the organization itself. So, this is a risky thing and must be improved by the organization. The second aspect is poor communication. Now, this poor communication here is at two levels. First, the management is not able to tell the employees clearly what they are supposed to do, how they are supposed to do it, and what they are not supposed to do. If my expectations are not clear, how do I expect employees to behave accordingly? If I fail to convey what I want from them, I cannot expect them to comply exactly with my ideas because ideas are not directly communicable. The only way to tell the workers about the idea is to tell them, and the more precisely I can share my ideas, the more objectively I can tell them what I actually need will be good for the organization and the overall performance of the employees. Moreover, it will reduce the occupational stress as well. The second aspect of poor communication is linked to inadequate information flow. Suppose the employee who is working on a particular task assigned to him needs some kind of informations to do this task successfully, but that information is not available to the employee, either because the information was not stored properly and is readily accessible, or there is a long channel which the employee has to pass through in order to seek the required information. There are so many barriers, permissions from many people are required before you can access that information, or simply you have not designed an effective mechanism of communicating, of providing appropriate information. I simply communicated what I need, but I forgot to tell them how they are supposed to do it. I forgot to tell them the possible risk factors which has resulted in failures in the past. So, they are supposed to avoid those mistakes once again. Being a manager, it's my responsibility to supply informations effectively. Here effectively means easy accessibility of the information, as well as we need to provide comprehensive information where no particular aspect, no important aspect of that information is lacking. And the third important aspect here is the lack of family friendly policies. See, family is the most important aspect of everybody's life. We go to work because we want to earn money, we want to earn respect, we want to earn resources. For what purpose? To support our family, to raise our children, to satisfy the need of our parents or our life partners or our extended family members. So, family is in a way the ultimate objective for somebody to work. If the policies of the organization or the working style of the organization is such which creates frequent conflict between the workplace and the family setting, definitely it is going to cause a lot of stress for the employees. Sometimes we see that working mothers suffer from the inflexible work hours. They are not free to choose their working hours, so that they have to struggle between the hours which they want to keep for their young children and the hours in which they are expected to work for the organization. Providing them with flexible schedule of working may improve this situation and reduce the stress level for them. Not only working mothers of young children, but any employee can need such kind of flexible work schedule at one point of the time or the other. Sometimes some people may have something very important to do at home, so they want to begin their work maybe 2 hours later than what are the scheduled hours, but they can continue till late evening. So, they are comfortable starting working late and ending the work in the late evening, but the organization is not providing such facility. The starting and the ending hour is fixed and the employee is supposed to abide by it, no flexibility can be granted. So, such situations are very stressful most of the time. And then if there are insufficient support programs, the employee wants to learn certain skills, there is no arrangement of training programs. The employee wants to have certain resources to do the task more efficiently, and there is no provision of fetching those resources, or the process of procuring those resources is too long. See, thus this kind of insufficient support programs are also causing a lot of stress for the employees. Then the next domain is interpersonal relationship. We have been discussing about this particular segment before as well, and we see that there are 3 types of social interactions that we find inside an organization. If employee is the center, he interacts with his or her superiors, boss, then he interacts with colleagues who are at the equal stage, and he also interacts with his subordinates. Moreover, these interactions are not limited to formal interactions only. With the passage of time, the relationship becomes more and more informal, and they start relying on each other for many things, even outside the organization also. So, poor communication here may create a stress. What does poor communication mean here? Here it means ineffective exchange of information and ideas among the co-workers, among the colleagues, people who are working in the same team to accomplish a goal. If they hesitate to share their ideas, to share their opinions freely and frankly with each other, it may cause a lot of problems in that team, which ultimately leads to a high level of occupational stress. If the person suffers from low job satisfaction because of the reasons we have discussed earlier, this will of course lead to reduced happiness, increased stress and less fulfillment obtained while performing one's role in the organizational setup. Decreased collaboration among the team workers, where they do not want to cooperate with each other, rather there is an undue competition between them, may add a lot of stress and cause significant damage to the mental health of the employees. So, higher level of anxiety, higher level of stress also creates a pressure at the workplace and lead to significant loss in the productivity of the employees. Another area is related with one's own role, which is known as work role. There are several factors which are correlated with this. For example, role conflict. Role conflict means when there are two contradictory demands being placed on the worker at the same time and the worker gets confused about what is to be attended first, what is to be done first. If there are such contradictory informations, it is going to create a lot of stress in employees. Role ambiguity means where the role is uncertain or it has certain elements which are unpredictable, which the employee is not aware of. Okay. Then what happens? When there are unclear job descriptions, when there are unclear organizational goals, they add on to this ambiguity. The responsibilities are vague, they are not clearly defined among the workers and the expectations from them are unclear. Related things are role erosion and self-role distance. You must have heard the term erosion, frequently used in physical and chemical sciences. It basically refers to the destruction of the uppermost layer of some element, like erosion of iron or erosion of soil due to heavy rainfalls or something like that. The same term has been adopted in psychological sciences and it refers to the phenomena where the attractive or lucrative aspects of the job, of one's role are cut off and given to someone else, leaving behind the responsibilities for the employee. Means I am performing a certain job, I put a lot of effort in doing so, but the recognition goes to someone else, or I am working at the ground level, my co-worker is not cooperating in that very much, but when there is a chance to participate in decision making, to participate in high level management committee meeting, my co-worker was invited, not me. So, this is going to cause me a lot of stress. This refers to as role erosion. So, I am performing the responsibilities, but my rights are being given to someone else. My recognition, my reinforcements, my rewards are being given to somebody else. This role erosion phenomena, either actual or perceived, creates a lot of stress in the employees and is a big factor of occupational stress in most of the institutions. Similarly, self-role distance means one's role is contradictory to one's self-concept. Suppose I see myself as a very honest person and I got appointment in an office which maybe where people like to take bribes and they also force me to take bribe. Now the thing is, if I take bribe, I will be contradicting my own self concept. It will never be accepted to my own self. If I do not take bribe, I will be misfit in that particular organization, in that particular office, a small unit may be engaged in such kind of practices. So, I will be maladjusted there. People will repeatedly force me to behave like others are behaving. Okay. So, if I want to be adjusted, I will have to contradict my self conception, which is not an easy task. If I abide by my own concept, I will be highly maladjustment with others. Both conditions will cause me a lot of stress. Another form of self-role distance is an incongruence between the personal attribute and the job requirements. For example, if a software engineer is deputed to look after a building which is being made, so what will happen? A software engineer is also an engineer, but he is trained in programming and computer language, not in making buildings. A person with a different set of skills has been appointed to do a task which requires an entirely different set of skills, which is of civil engineering. So, if we have to get a supervisor for making a building or a dam, we need a civil engineer, not a software engineer. This type of incongruence where we place wrong employee to a wrong place, this is called self-role distance. So, both forms of self-role distance, either the job demands are different from the way I see myself, it contradicts with my self-conception, that is also called self-role distance, and when the person's attribute and abilities and set of skills do not match with the demands of the job, that is also a form of self-role distance. Then personal inadequacy and resource inadequacy are two more factors leading to significant stress. This inadequacy should go this side. Okay. So, these are two factors. First is personal inadequacy and the second one is the resource inadequacy. So, personal inadequacy means if the employee lacks the necessary skills and training which is required to perform the job successfully, or the placement is not perfect, the kind of thing which we were talking about just now. A software engineer has been deputed to monitor the making of a big tall building. Okay. So, if there is a mismatch, if there is an inappropriate placement of the employee, or the skills of the employees are not periodically upskilled, no training program has been organized, no orientation programs, no refresher programs, nothing. So, if the employee enters with a particular set of skills, he or she is compelled to continue with the same, and the employees do not have any chance to upgrade themselves, to update themselves, to get them exposed to the new additions to the field. This is also a cause of inadequacy in the employees. If the technology or the work culture are changing very fast and the employees do not change up to that pace, this may also create problems for the employees. At the same time, resource inadequacy refers to when the employees feel they do not have enough resources to perform the task. They need more resources or better resources. They may have a laptop or a computer, but the configuration of the computer is not suitable to do the job. There is an old configuration and the task requires a newer setting, a newer configuration as compared to that. So, the person either has no computer or has a computer with older configuration, the requirement is different. So, the not having enough resources or not having better resources, appropriate resources, both are included in this particular section. This can happen due to many reasons. Maybe the employees do not get a chance to communicate their requirements to the management. So, the management is unaware, the management thinks that everything is going on perfectly without knowing that the employees are struggling to perform their roles effectively, efficiently, and the stress, the dissatisfaction is growing. Or the same can happen due to the financial constraints. I know there is a requirement, I want to fulfill the requirement, but I do not have funds. And if I do not have funds, I have no choice but to continue with the existing resources. Or there may be a case where the management is completely insensitive and think that the demands from the employees are nothing but excuses for not doing the work. So, they do not have any inclination to consider the request of employees sincerely or at least to assess them fairly, and they simply continue with the same kind of setup and same kind of resources. Fourth important segment is the career concerns of the employees. Now, what are the career concerns of the employees? Maybe job insecurity. Everyone wants security and economic stability in life. It is not easy to switch job and join new organizations after every 6 months, because it includes a lot of financial as well as psychological burden engaged. Then very rapid changes happening in the technology, market shifts, or change in the work culture. And finally, if the growth opportunities are very narrow, they are very limited, or if there is a phenomena like glass ceiling, it is difficult for them to continue with the organization, and it also build up high level of stress in them. So, this was all about this particular section, and today we learn how the design of the task, the management style, the interpersonal relationships at work, work role, career concerns and environmental conditions are responsible for causing occupational stress. These are the related reading materials which you can refer to in order to enhance your knowledge about the subject matter. Some more references for you. Thank you very much for your patient listening.